Every morning, before you eat anything, before you drink your first cup of coffee, your body is already making an important metabolic decision. Inside your bloodstream, hormones are quietly preparing your cells for the day ahead. Muscles, fat cells, and the liver are all receiving signals about what kind of fuel the body should use. Should the body begin the day burning stored fat, or should it shift quickly towards storing incoming energy? Most people believe this decision depends entirely on what they eat throughout the day. If fat accumulates, the meals must contain too many calories. If fat burns, the meals must be smaller or healthier. But something surprising happens inside the body during the first hour after waking. During this time, your metabolism enters a unique hormonal window. Cortisol begins rising to help mobilize energy after sleep. Fatty acids start appearing in the bloodstream, released from fat cells that have been supplying energy throughout the night. Muscles become especially responsive to incoming fuel, preparing for activity. Your body is essentially waking up its metabolic engine, and what happens next can influence how your body handles energy for the rest of the day. Imagine two mornings that begin almost the same way. In the first morning, someone wakes up, immediately eats breakfast, and begins the day sitting. The body quickly shifts into processing incoming food. Blood sugar rises, insulin increases, and the metabolic system moves toward storing energy. In the second morning, something small changes. Instead of immediately introducing food, the body experiences a short period of light movement. Muscles begin contracting. Energy demand rises. Fatty acids circulating in the bloodstream begin fueling those muscles. The metabolic message sent through the body is different. Instead of shifting quickly into storage mode, the body continues using stored fuel. This small difference in the first hour of the day can influence the metabolic signals that guide fat burning throughout the entire day. Today, we are going to step inside the body and explore what happens during those early morning moments. Inside your hormones, inside your muscles, inside the metabolic signals that determine whether your body prefers to store energy or burn stored fat. Because sometimes the habit that shapes your metabolism all day long begins in the quiet minutes after you wake up. For many people, the struggle with belly fat feels like a constant battle against their own body. They count calories, adjust their diet, exercise when they can, and yet progress often feels slow or unpredictable. It becomes easy to believe that something inside their metabolism must be broken. But metabolism is not simply a matter of discipline. It is a network of biological signals, and those signals respond to patterns in daily life. The body evolved under conditions very different from modern routines. For most of human history, mornings did not begin with immediate food and inactivity. Instead, waking was followed by movement. People walked, gathered food, prepared for work, or traveled. Energy demand appeared quickly after waking. The body learned to expect this pattern. During the night, while sleeping, the body naturally burns stored fuel. The fat cells release fatty acids into the bloodstream to provide energy for organs and tissues, while no food is entering the system. By the time morning arrives, the body has already been using stored energy for several hours. When you wake up, this process has not completely stopped. Fatty acids are still circulating in the bloodstream, and your metabolism is still operating in a partially fasted state. Muscles and organs are ready to use that stored fuel if energy demand appears. But modern mornings often interrupt this metabolic rhythm. Instead of movement, many people begin the day sitting. Instead of allowing the body to continue using stored energy, breakfast arrives immediately. Blood sugar rises, insulin follows, and the metabolic system quickly shifts away from fat burning toward processing incoming fuel. Again, this is not a malfunction. It is the body responding exactly as it was designed to respond. Insulin helps move glucose into cells and prepares the body to store energy from the meal. But while insulin is elevated, fat cells receive a signal to hold on to their stored fuel. This means the fat-burning process that began during the night ends sooner. When people struggle with fat loss, they often assume the problem lies in the foods they eat or the amount of exercise they perform. But the body's metabolism is also shaped by when certain signals appear during the day. Morning routines are one of the earliest signals your metabolism receives. They tell the body whether the day begins with energy demand or immediate energy intake, and the body adjusts its metabolic strategy accordingly. Understanding this helps remove the idea that metabolism is simply stubborn or slow. Instead, it reveals that metabolism is listening carefully to the signals it receives every morning. One of the most common beliefs about fat burning is that it only happens during exercise. Many people imagine fat burning as something that begins when a workout starts, when the heart rate rises, when sweat appears, when muscles are pushed through intense effort. In this view, fat burning is limited to the short window when someone is actively exercising. But inside the body, fat burning is not limited to workouts. It is a continuous metabolic process. At any moment, your body is choosing between two main fuel sources. One is glucose, which comes from the food you eat. The other is fatty acids, which come from the energy stored inside fat cells. So the body is constantly shifting between these fuels depending on hormonal signals. When glucose from a recent meal is abundant, the body tends to use that fuel first. When insulin levels are elevated, fat cells receive a signal to hold on to their stored energy. During this time, fat burning slows because the body is processing incoming fuel. But when insulin levels fall and no new food is entering the bloodstream, the body begins turning back toward stored energy. Fat cells release fatty acids into circulation. Muscles, organs, and even the brain begin using these fatty acids for fuel. This process can happen throughout the day, not only during workouts. In fact, one of the longest fat-burning periods often occurs while you are sleeping. During the night, when several hours pass without food, insulin levels fall, and the body relies heavily on stored fuel. By the time morning arrives, your metabolism has already been operating in a fat-burning state for hours. But what happens next depends on the signals the body receives after waking. If the body immediately shifts into processing food, the fat-burning phase ends sooner. If the body experiences movement and energy demand before food arrives, the fat-burning phase can continue longer. This is why fat burning is not simply about how hard you exercise. It is about the metabolic environment created throughout the day. Hormones, movement, and the timing of food all influence which fuel the body prefers at a given moment. And the signals that appear in the early morning can quietly shape that preference for the rest of the day. If fat burning depends on hormonal signals, then the real obstacle preventing the body from using stored fat is not simply food itself. The real villain is something quieter: persistent insulin dominance. Insulin is one of the most powerful hormones controlling how the body manages energy. After you eat, glucose enters the bloodstream, and insulin is released by the pancreas. Insulin helps move that glucose into cells so it can be used for energy or stored for later. This process is essential for survival. But insulin carries another instruction that is just as important. While insulin is elevated, fat cells receive a message. Do not release stored energy. The body is currently processing incoming fuel. This means that whenever insulin levels are high, fat burning slows or pauses. Now imagine how modern daily routines often unfold. A late-night snack raises insulin before sleep. The body begins the night with elevated energy signals. Morning arrives, and breakfast appears almost immediately. Insulin rises again. Shortly afterward, coffee with sugar or a sweet pastry adds another rise. Lunch arrives a few hours later, followed by an afternoon snack. Throughout much of the day, insulin remains present in the bloodstream. Each rise in insulin signals the body to focus on storing or managing incoming energy rather than releasing stored fuel. Fat cells respond by holding on to the energy they contain. Over time, the body spends less time in the metabolic state where fat can leave those cells. But something interesting happens in the early morning hours. After a night without food, insulin levels are usually low. Fat cells have already been releasing energy during sleep. Fatty acids are circulating in the bloodstream, helping supply fuel to organs and tissues. In other words, when you wake up, the body is already partially in a fat-burning state. The villain appears when this state is interrupted too quickly. If food arrives immediately and insulin rises again before the body has a chance to continue using stored fuel, the fat-burning window closes early. But if energy demand appears first, through light movement or activity, muscles begin using the fatty acids already circulating in the bloodstream. Instead of shutting down fat burning, the body continues the process that began during the night. The villain is not breakfast itself. It is the rapid shift back into insulin dominance before the body has finished using the fuel it already released. And the signals that appear in the first hour of the morning often determine how quickly that shift occurs. Now imagine what is happening inside your body in the first moments after you wake up. During the night, while you were sleeping, your body continued working. The brain remained active, the heart kept pumping, and organs carried out thousands of small processes that require energy. Because no food was entering the body during those hours, the metabolism relied on stored fuel. Fat cells released fatty acids into the bloodstream. These molecules traveled through your circulation and were used by muscles, organs, and other tissues as a steady energy source. By the time morning arrives, this fat-burning process has already been underway for several hours. Inside your bloodstream, some of those fatty acids are still present. At the same time, another hormone begins rising. Cortisol. Cortisol often receives a negative reputation because it is associated with stress, but in the morning it serves an important biological purpose. The early morning rise in cortisol helps wake the body and prepare it for activity. It mobilizes energy and makes fuel more available for muscles and the brain. In a way, cortisol acts like a biological alarm clock for metabolism. It signals that the body should prepare for movement. When you stand up and begin moving after waking, your muscles begin contracting and immediately require energy. The easiest fuel to access is the fatty acids already circulating in the bloodstream from the overnight fast. Muscle cells begin absorbing these fatty acids and converting them into usable energy through metabolic pathways inside the mitochondria. Each step you take, each movement you make, reinforces this process. The body recognizes that stored energy is needed. Fat burning continues. Meanwhile, insulin levels remain relatively low because no new food has entered the system yet. With insulin low, fat cells remain free to release additional fatty acids if muscles demand more fuel. The metabolic message spreading through the body becomes clear. Energy demand is high. Stored fuel should continue to be used. But now imagine a different sequence. If food arrives immediately after waking, blood sugar begins rising. The pancreas releases insulin to manage the incoming glucose. As insulin levels rise, fat cells receive the signal to stop releasing stored energy. The body begins focusing on processing the new fuel instead. The overnight fat-burning phase ends sooner. From the outside, the difference between these two mornings may seem very small, but inside the body, the metabolic signals are completely different. In one case, the body continues using stored fat as fuel. In the other case, the body quickly transitions back into processing incoming energy. And the first hour of the morning often determines which of these metabolic stories unfolds. When people begin introducing a new morning habit that activates metabolism, the first few days can feel a little unusual. The body has been following a certain rhythm for a long time, and when that rhythm changes, the metabolic system needs time to adjust. Some people notice that their hunger patterns shift slightly. Others may feel different energy levels in the early hours of the day. This does not mean the body is struggling. It simply means the body is learning to respond to a new sequence of signals. For many people, the morning has been associated with immediate food intake and low movement. The body becomes accustomed to receiving glucose early in the day, and hormones adapt to that routine. When the morning instead begins with movement and energy demand, the metabolic system starts recognizing a different pattern. In the beginning, muscles begin using fatty acids that are already circulating in the bloodstream from the overnight fast. Because this process may not have been emphasized before, the body gradually becomes more efficient at using these fuels. Inside muscle cells, enzymes responsible for fat oxidation begin becoming more active. Mitochondria, the small energy factories inside cells, improve their ability to convert fatty acids into usable energy. Over time, muscles become better at drawing on stored fuel instead of relying only on incoming glucose. At the same time, another important change begins happening in the hormonal system. Insulin sensitivity improves. Insulin sensitivity describes how effectively cells respond when insulin signals arrive. When sensitivity is high, the body can move glucose into cells with smaller amounts of insulin. When sensitivity is low, the pancreas must release larger amounts of insulin to accomplish the same task. Morning metabolic activation can help maintain strong insulin sensitivity because muscles are already active and prepared to absorb energy when meals eventually arrive. Over time, the body also becomes better at switching between fuel sources. When food arrives later in the day, glucose can be used efficiently. When food is absent, fatty acids can provide energy without difficulty. This ability to transition smoothly between fuel types is known as metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility is one of the key characteristics of a healthy metabolism. It allows the body to respond naturally to changing energy conditions without dramatic swings in hunger or fatigue. As the body adapts to this new rhythm, mornings begin to feel more natural. Movement becomes easier, energy levels become steadier, and the body grows more comfortable drawing on stored fuel. What initially felt like a small change in routine gradually becomes a powerful signal guiding metabolism each day. As this morning habit becomes part of a daily rhythm, the benefits begin spreading quietly across the body's metabolic systems. What started as a small change in the first hour of the day gradually influences how energy moves through the body for many hours afterward. One of the first benefits appears in insulin sensitivity. When muscles become active in the morning, they begin absorbing energy more efficiently throughout the day. This means that when meals eventually arrive, glucose can move into muscle cells with smaller insulin signals. The pancreas does not need to release large surges of insulin to manage blood sugar. Lower and smoother insulin responses allow the body to spend less time locked in energy storage mode. Another benefit appears in blood sugar stability. When muscles are metabolically active early in the day, they act as a powerful sink for incoming glucose later. Instead of dramatic spikes in blood sugar after meals, the body often experiences smoother rises and falls in energy levels. This stability can influence how the body feels throughout the day. Instead of experiencing sudden drops in energy that trigger cravings or hunger, the body receives a steadier flow of fuel. Morning metabolic activation also helps strengthen the body's ability to access stored energy. Because fatty acids are being used earlier in the day, the metabolic pathways responsible for fat oxidation become more efficient. Over time, the body becomes comfortable drawing energy from fat cells instead of depending entirely on incoming food. Some people worry that delaying food or adding morning movement might cause fatigue or leave them without enough energy to start the day. But biologically, the opposite often occurs. The body has already been releasing fatty acids during the night. When movement appears in the morning, those fatty acids become immediate fuel for muscles. Energy is already available inside the bloodstream. Instead of creating exhaustion, this process often supports stable energy. Another fear is that fat burning requires intense exercise early in the day. In reality, the signal does not need to be extreme. Gentle movement, walking, stretching, or light activity is often enough to tell the body that energy demand exists. Once that signal appears, the metabolic pathways responsible for using stored fuel become active. This is not about forcing the body into a difficult routine. It is about allowing the body to continue the metabolic process that already began during sleep. When the body receives the signal that movement and energy demand exist early in the day, the hormonal environment supporting fat burning often lasts much longer. And over weeks and months, these repeated signals can gradually shape the way the body manages energy. Imagine 2 mornings that begin almost the same way. In the first morning, the alarm rings and the day begins quietly. The body moves from sleep into wakefulness, but activity remains low. Breakfast arrives quickly, and the digestive system begins processing incoming food. Blood sugar rises, insulin follows, and the body shifts toward managing the new energy entering the bloodstream. Inside the metabolic system, the overnight fat-burning phase ends early. Fat cells receive the signal that new fuel is available, and the body begins prioritizing the energy from the meal instead. Now imagine the second morning. The alarm rings, and instead of immediately introducing food, the body receives a different signal. Movement. Maybe it is a short walk, maybe stretching, maybe light activity around the house. Nothing intense or exhausting. Just enough movement for muscles to begin working. Inside the body, those muscle contractions begin demanding fuel. Fatty acids already circulating in the bloodstream from the overnight fast begin entering muscle cells. Mitochondria convert those fatty acids into usable energy, and the metabolic message spreading through the body becomes clear. Energy demand exists. Stored fuel should continue to be used. In this second morning, the body continues the fat-burning process that began during sleep. From the outside, the difference between these 2 mornings appears small. But metabolism responds to signals repeated over time, morning after morning, day after day. In the first routine, the body repeatedly receives the signal that incoming energy arrives immediately after waking. The metabolic system becomes accustomed to switching quickly into storage mode. In the second routine, the body receives a signal that stored energy is needed before new fuel appears. Fat-burning pathways remain active longer. Over weeks and months, these signals begin shaping the body's metabolic identity. Food is no longer seen as the only factor guiding fat loss. Morning signals become part of the conversation. Movement, hormones, energy demand. These signals guide metabolism in subtle ways. Sometimes the most powerful metabolic changes do not come from extreme diets or exhausting workouts. They come from small patterns repeated consistently. A short movement routine after waking. A few minutes that tell the body the day has begun with energy demand. And once the body begins receiving that signal regularly, the metabolic story unfolding inside your cells can gradually shift. If this explanation helped you understand how your metabolism works in a new way, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we explore the hidden biological processes behind fat burning, hormones, and energy balance so you can work with your body instead of constantly fighting it. Because when you understand the signals guiding metabolism, even small daily habits can quietly become powerful tools.